Thank you, Brian. Good evening, everyone. Here to historic City Hall in beautiful downtown Summerside. It is March 5th, 2024, and we have two meetings this evening, a Committee of the Whole meeting and then a special council meeting. So I will begin here at 5:01 by calling our Committee of the Whole meeting to order. First item is approval of the agenda. Before I call for a motion to approve the agenda, I do have one amendment. We are striking item 6, sponsorship requests from residents. And any other amendments or changes, additions to the agenda, Council? No. With that, I'll call for a motion to approve the amended agenda. Councillor Snow, second. Councillor Adams, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, we'll proceed with the agenda as presented and amended. We begin each one of our meetings by acknowledging the land upon which we gather is the unceded Mi'kmaq territory. Abagway is covered by the historic treaties of peace and friendship. We pay our respects to the indigenous Mi'kmaq people who have occupied this island for over 12,000 years, past, present, and future. At this point, I'll call for any member of council to declare a conflict of interest with respect to any item on the agenda under the Committee of the Whole agenda. Hearing none, we will proceed. Moving on to item 5, the first of our policy items here for the night, CAO Performance Monitoring Review, Monitoring Policy Review, coming back to the Committee of the Whole from our Bylaw, Governance, and Communications Committee, chaired by Councillor Adams. Also sitting on that committee is Councillor Cameron. So I'll pass it over to you, Councillor Adams, and I think we have Kendra Gunn, our Director of Human Resources and Legal Affairs as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Your Worship. And I guess I won't waste any time. I'll just pass it right over to Kendra.
Okay. So the committee was asked to review the policy, and it was my understanding this review was more around some confusion coming out of some of the language from the previous version, or the actually current version that hasn't been changed yet. But one of the other processes we went through was to change the time frame for which the review process would occur, and it was decided that the spring was probably a better time for it to happen, as council, when there was a change in council, it would happen in the fall, and it would be kind of inappropriate to be asking them to review the CAO when they haven't yet had the opportunity to work with the CAO in some instances. So you will note that the majority of changes, now Brian did say, scroll down so they can see it. The majority of changes throughout this document are only to clean up some of the language and process and to be more user-friendly and clear. No real substantive changes. And then the dates to spring. We did take out some of the references to some processes that didn't have any definitions. Previously, there was reference to the use of a 360-degree input into the process. So we've just used language that is more layperson, more user-friendly. The Bylaw, Governance, and Communications Committee reviewed this draft and thought it was appropriate to bring forward. In reviewing it, I did see one error that I missed. I want to take you down to number 7, where it references and given to the CAO by the standing committee. It shouldn't be standing committee, it should be BGC committee. But other than that, unless you have further questions, this is what we propose to, the committee proposes to replace the former policy. Yes, sorry.
So Director Kendra, when you refer to the BGC, so that's just the committee in number 7?
Yes. So for example, when I'm scrolling back up, it says before procedure starts, it says council members from the Bylaw, Governance, and Communications, or BGC committee. So that's the committee that's taking the lead in implementing the process. So when we go down to number 7, I forgot to change the standing committee over to the BGC committee.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Do Councillor Adams or Councillor Cameron, you two have spent the most time on this. Do you want to just share your overall impressions? I'm getting the sense that this is the recommendation coming from your committee to move forward to council.
Nikki, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess, like Kendra had said, the majority of the changes were around just the wording of everything. Basically, very similar to the original document. Number 7 and number 8, which is now 8A and B, are kind of the biggest changes that we've made, which goes into the confusion that we had last time, that the review will be given to the CAO. Any questions that come from the CAO will be given back to the committee to then be answered as a group. So no discussion will happen with just the committee and the CAO. Everything will happen as we come back together. But it gives the committee time to have those answers to the questions. So that's why those questions will be handed before the entire review is done. And I felt like we've kind of all felt like that was the middle ground between everything, and it felt very fair, and the wording felt very clear.
So when I read, and this is what happened before, when I read this, it sounds to me like the CAO would review the document in private and then come back to all of council for a fulsome discussion.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, but
If he has questions specific to what's in the document, that is presented to the BGC,
yeah,
just to prepare them to answer the questions when we all come back together for fulsome discussion.
with CAO involved.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, just so that because I guess that's where the confusion happened last time, was the questions were answered without the presence of all of council. But now we will have those questions and they will be answered in front of council.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, perfect.
So I guess this is, like, it's not a large document, so this is anybody's chance, because we're going to be coming up on the date again.
April this year.
Yes,
So I'll be notifying you as, excuse me, as per number 2. It says the evaluation process shall commence at a time of council's choosing, but generally annually, beginning in April and triggered by an email from the Director of Human Resources.
The last review was completed when I know it hasn't been that long ago.
I don't know, because
Yeah, it just seems really close together to be, but, yeah, obviously we gotta start in April at some point, so better close than too far apart.
Okay, I don't really have maybe a question, I guess it's more of a point. I think the way I'm looking at it, and I hate to belabor the point, but we are responsible to the CAO as council's one employee in that sense. And I'm just wondering, then there will be questions for the CAO, which the CAO can look at. If there's any questions or comments, he goes back to the Bylaw Governance Committee to have them answered, is that it? Or to the
No.
council?
they're just given to the committee so that when we come to council, it is prepared to answer those questions.
Okay,
There's no questions answered outside of this whole council meeting together.
okay. So again, I hate to belabor it. It's just, I really want to be clear on this because this for me is the area that I struggle with. So will we collectively as a council body sit in on any of that process with the CAO together when some of these communications are taking place? That's what I'm not sure of.
the process is we discuss review, we hand review over. He takes whatever time he needs to look at it. We're not with him. He can take his time to look at it, or she, depending on who the CEO is at the time. If any questions come about, they're just simply handed back to the committee and you go your separate ways. There is no discussion around anything until it comes back here.
Okay, so then, final point, in that review back to the CAO, those comments are coming from who? The full body?
Yeah,
A couple
like
of people?
the same way, yeah, like how it was. I mean, I wasn't here for the full review last time. I only came in near the end. A document went around, everyone read it, everyone approved it, everyone had a say in what went in it. It was signed and given to the CAO. So that, my understanding is that process will remain the same, that everyone still has a say. The document's drafted, we all approve it, we all read it, we all have our say in that. And then if he has questions, it will come to the committee. The committee will take those questions to prepare answers for when we all meet together. So nowhere in there is there a time where anyone is answering a question without the whole presence of council there.
Well, I'll be honest, I do struggle with that. I just really feel it's very important that we work with and become in a working relationship, and I don't think that can happen if we don't have certain things that maybe the cadence that somebody would want to speak on or whatever, if that's being relayed, and I wouldn't want the CAO to take anything in the wrong way.
So if we look at number 7, Norma, I've got it up on the screen there. So once the evaluation is created by you as a council, number 7 says, the official evaluation shall be signed by all council and given to the CAO by the standing, well, it'll say the BGC committee, by the end of June. So it's just literally given as a document. It could potentially be in an envelope, doesn't say that there, but just given. And then the CAO shall have the opportunity to review the document in private and may, not must, but may present any questions about the evaluation at a subsequent in-camera meeting with council to permit fulsome discussion on the feedback.
So that would be, and I'm sorry for coming across like I'm being picky. So that would be if there was anything that the CAO had questions on, he could request speaking to full council?
There's going to be a subsequent in-camera meeting with council to permit fulsome discussion on the feedback.
Okay. All right then, thank you.
At that time, even if the CAO themselves doesn't have a question on something, if I wanted to just explain maybe something I had put in it, or if you wanted to explain something you had put in it, you could at that time have a discussion in the fulsome discussion, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So that helps, because I think in some of our earlier discussions, it would be just several people speaking, was what my understanding was, and that the rest of council members would not, be able to say anything in that type of a setting. So if we have that opportunity to speak with the CAO, I think that's a good thing.
That to me is what 7 provides. Totally, that's what the intent of 7 is for.
Okay, thank you.
For the record, this in no way affects any day-to-day communications with the CAO. If I have whatever issue going on, I'm more than able to knock on Gordon's door or whoever the CAO is and say, hey,
Yes.
here's an issue.
Yeah.
He
And-
might not agree. It's not coming from all of council, but as an individual councillor, historically, if I have whatever issue, I would knock on his door and
Right, and that's in part of the preamble.
Right.
There's a section that reads, as part of the review, council will ensure the CAO is advised when necessary on areas needing improvement and that the CAO receives recognition for satisfactory or outstanding performance. So the when necessary, it's throughout the year.
Thank you, Director. Thank you, committee members and council. So at this point then, the CEO performance review policy will be finalized and updated with appropriate dates. And it
And-
will come to council on the 18th for a motion to adopt at that time.
So I can make that change, the BCG change
Yeah.
to the document for
Yeah,
for the council meeting.
Yeah, when it comes to council for vote, you know, council as well has always the opportunity to bring forward any amendments, but at this point, the purpose of having the committee of the whole discussion is so that when we get to our council meeting, we can have a motion to adopt the new policy. Great,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
And just,
Yes,
thank you to Kendra, we should say, because us trying to get our thoughts and our assumptions across as to what it said, sometimes we were all like sort of on like different assumptions, so it worked out and now everybody's hopefully on the same page moving forward. So,
Great.
yeah, thank you.
Okay. Have a good rest of your meeting, everybody.
And with that, we'll move on to item 7, which is recommendation Affordable Housing Incentive Program. This is Finance Committee. Councillor McDougall, Chair of Finance Committee, is not able to join us this evening, but I understand he's spoken with Councillor McCollum, and Councillor McCollum is going to bring forward the recommendation. Again, just for getting used to our new procedure. This was sent to Finance Committee. Committee has done their work and provided their recommendation and information that is in your meeting package. At this point, then we will discuss it and either make any suggestions or changes. It could go back to Finance Committee, or it could then proceed to Council for a motion to adopt. With that, I will pass it over to you, Councillor McCollum, our Acting Chair of Finance.
It's on page.
Oh, I see it, okay. Do you want that read into the minutes or as the recommendation to council?
We need to. Kristen, you may
I
want to
would
come
say-
up too.
It was in the package, so if there's any questions.
If there's any questions based on it.
Okay, for the members of council then, pardon? Okay. So the recommendation coming forth on March the 5th, in the absence of the finance chair, Councillor McDougall, it's the travel policy revision, and all members have that in your package of information. And basically the purpose of it is the finance committee. Do you want me just to wait?
I'm just wondering if Kristen or somebody can scroll us down on the page.
No, that's fine. I just don't want to mess it up on finance. So, the finance committee was asked to review the travel policy, specifically the mileage rate to be used. And in your package, it will give a very good detail of the following outlines, which I won't read. You have that information on the changes recommended by the Finance Committee after a lengthy discussion. So I'll just leave it there, and the recommendation at the end would be that council would approve, I would believe, at the monthly meeting, the above changes to the travel policy with the revisions to be effective the date of an approved resolution, and I believe that'll come forth in the monthly meeting.
Thank you, Councillor. We have Director Dunsford, Director of Finance here. I think we've jumped on to travel policy, right? Yep. Director, is there anything you want to touch on from the recommendations or highlights as well to supplement Councillor McCollum's summary?
Essentially, we're doing a little bit of housekeeping, and the main item is the
change of the mileage rate that will be used for reimbursement. It'll be now based on the PEI Public Service Commission rather than Canada Revenue Agency.
Councillor Snow?
Can we get an explanation of why that, so, for Joe public out there who thinks, so, is it one more than the other? Is there a reason, what's behind it? I know the answer, I'm just sort of asking.
Yeah,
so
the Canada Revenue Agency is higher. It is currently 64 cents for the second tier rate for 2024. PEI Public Service Commission, which a number of other municipalities follow as well, I believe is 51.4 for February. And it fluctuates monthly, yes.
And I think from former discussions on that, Director Kristen, some council members felt going through the Public Service Commission would be a bit more appropriate than the higher rate.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
I guess this was sort of one that's always not irritated me, but it's always sort of like been dumbfounding why we like skipped a step. So it was like, you know, municipality, and then there was provincial, and then the CRA federal rate, and we always just sort of bypass the provincial one. So to me, this makes more sense to be in line with the government that is closest to us,
Yeah.
rather than.
And I think in the past, I mean, the CRA rate was posted and available, whereas the PEI Public Service, you have to request it and get on a
Right.
list, but
It was just easier to access.
yes,
Yeah.
correct.
Any other further questions, comments from council? No, hearing none, then, again, same process, the travel policy, Councillor McColman, I'm going to, read into, your thoughts that it is being recommended to move forward to council for a motion to adopt a revised policy.
Okay, thank you for that prompting. Anyway, so on behalf of the Finance Committee, I would like to recommend to council, we do move this forward to the monthly council meeting to bring forth the resolution for voting.
Thank you, Councillor, and so we will. That'll be the 18th as well of March. Moving to item 7, also come from Finance Committee, recommendation with respect to Affordable Housing Incentive Program. Councillor McColman and Director Dunsford.
We're doing some looking at each other back and forth. So I'll just follow through the same steps as before,
Sure,
Director?
sure.
Okay. So on behalf of the Finance Committee, coming forth out of our monthly discussions when we met, the Affordable Housing Incentive Program revisions for 2024. In your package of information, there's a supporting explanation around the purpose, the background, and the report. Basically, the purpose from the Finance Committee, after discussions with the whole committee, was asked to review the Affordable Housing Incentive Program for local relevance, uptake, and effectiveness to determine if the program should be continued or discontinued. It is being recommended by the Finance Committee to continue with this program with the following amendments, and that the program will be reviewed annually. So there are a number of incentives that will be replacing those that are in the original program. I won't get into those details because it's in your package. So I'll just open it up if anyone has any questions for Director.
And I'll just explain the changes that are being made. So property tax grants. We will provide property tax relief for the municipal property tax, incremental municipal property tax for up to a maximum of 10 years. The change is the percentage of that rebate. So in the past, it's been 100%, and now we're going to structure it. So year 1 and 2 is 90%, 3 and 4 is 75, 5 and 6 is 60%, 7 and 8 is 45, and 9 and 10 is 30. And then as well, the development and permit fee rebate will be rebated at 50% of the building permit fee. when occupancy is issued. And that previously was 100%. So we did some research of other incentive programs on affordable housing.
Are there any questions? Okay, so that recommendation on behalf of the Finance Committee will be coming to full council at the monthly meeting on March the 18th. And that recommendation will be asking council to vote on that, whether it'll be approved or not. Okay?
And this was the first review since that policy was approved back in 2019.
Just one quick one, as I see that there's a downtown bonus mentioned. But then in the criteria, there's no mention of it. I'm wondering if in the criteria there shouldn't be a mention of downtown bonus or incentive to spur more residential development in that downtown.
I mean, one of the criteria does say location, but we could elaborate on that.
Yeah, just to sort of, as we work through some of the other stuff we're talking about, yeah, so that's the only thing I'm thinking.
Sure.
Thank you, Councillor McColman, and to Director Dunsford and the Finance Committee, who has been meeting quite regularly with a full schedule of items and bringing things forward. So appreciate all the hard work as we continue to develop housing in our community. And I think we started, Summerside led the island last year with 503 housing starts, which was almost half of all housing starts in Prince Edward Island. So we are getting housing built across the spectrum, and a number of affordable housing projects, as well as market housing. So great work, everyone, and we'll see how that goes at council. Next up, we have Councillor Adams. You have 9, 10, and 11. So I'm going to hand them each to you and start east-west housing corridor spring start date. Councillor?
Thank you, Your Worship. It looks worse than it is, I'm hoping. But so just the east-west housing corridor spring start date. Just an update on, people have been asking when, I know there's still, everything's still frozen, but what's our target date for a start in the spring? Anybody?
I don't know the answer to that offhand. I can check with the contractor and see what their current thoughts are.
Okay.
There's no contractually obligated start date. There is a contractually obligated finish date, but can certainly get in contact with them and pass that information back along to council if council wishes.
Yeah, that'd be great, because there's just some talk in the community about things that that contractor has to, is going to do before that gets started, so I just don't want it to get kicked down the road any more than it was in the fall, so that would be great.
Currently, what has or has not, like, has there been any significant work done to the site, Gordon? Other than, I know our sign's up saying, but is there?
To my knowledge, there's been some
Site-
small level of
yeah.
site work done. There's been some trees taken down. There's a lot of, I'll say for lack of a better word, pipe and other materials on site that are ready, like,
Yeah.
for storage purposes, I guess, and are hopefully ready to go in the spring.
Okay.
Thank you. So we'll move into the next one. Same sort of deal, core block project update. And these are all, actually all three of them are pretty much initiated by the public asking if there's updates on any of them, so.
Want me to answer that one? Carrie, we've been hearing similar comments within the community. I spoke with Mike Thuska, Director of Economic Development, on the very thing, just because, you start hearing things within the community, and have been informed that the targeted start date would be June. So everything's pointing to a June start date, and
Great,
hopefully shovels are on the ground as proposed.
excellent, thank you. And we'll move quickly along to the next one, same idea, Eco Park tenant confirmation.
I'll leave that to
Yeah, nothing new to update there. We have a tenant who has a signed letter of intent, so we're still in discussions with that tenant, and also working on backup plans for building number 1 and the rest of the lots in the Eco Park. So.
Somebody had asked me, so a letter of intent, does that have like a date to it? That if you haven't done what you've said you've intended to do by a certain date, then you have further discussions, or or does it just carry on until somebody else gets interested and prompts them to?
Letters of intent are normally not binding, so in this instance, it wouldn't be binding. And leases are not normally signed until the buildings are complete, so.
Yeah. Okay. Good. That's it for me, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor. Item 12, which is the Food Security Action Meeting, so this is coming out of the PMP meeting, committee. PMP committee, one of the roles of the PMP committee is to act as a catch-all for items that don't fit neatly into the other standing committees. This is one of those items. It was on the agenda for at the last PMP committee, and it originally came from a committee of the whole meeting where Councillor Doiron raised issues of food insecurity in our community, and we sent it to committee to look at what further options could be undertaken. So through the course of the discussions, we got a summary briefly of some of the things that we do as a city with respect to maintenance of community gardens and requirements or potential options for us to look to explore for things like looking to waive building permit fees for greenhouses and these types of things. The committee thought it would be best to recommend to council that we as a city set up a community meeting in the late winter, early spring to gather community partners across Summerside to identify what the need is, although we know it's great, and then also to identify which community groups are actively participating in addressing food insecurity and food security matters, and look for a collection of ideas and ways that both we as a city but also members in our community can take an active role to help address food security. So the committee's recommendation is for council and city staff to establish the community meeting session in early spring and collect ideas and input and recommendations and have those come back where they apply to council, and ideally in a lot of these community meetings, one of the real values is finding people in the community who are active and who create partnerships themselves and take on initiatives themselves. So that's the recommendation. I will put that out to council for any thoughts, feedback.
Nurseries are very much interested in working with the community in this. I'm back at the greenhouse, so they're tickety-boo about this, and I went out to Coolbreeze the other day, and they think this is a wonderful idea. People need to start having their own community gardens, or even their own gardens for growing their own food.
Any others from council? I've just got some nodding heads, and so Councillor Doiron, this doesn't need to go to council for a formal motion or recommendation. So as long as council's comfortable with that, perhaps staff and Councillor Gallant can work on putting together that community session, and we can go from there. Great. Item 13, snow removal, Councillors Adams and Morrison, who both had a similar request, so now you're together on the agenda. And in your seating arrangement, but councillors?
You can go ahead, I've already.
I have a few comments and questions about snow removal. But before I get too far into it, I want to just say from what I've seen over the years, and I have had the opportunity to travel a little bit to other places when it snowed, and Summerside does a pretty good job. It doesn't mean it can't be a little better or there can't be a few changes, but for the most part, the people in Summerside are extremely lucky with their snow removal and the way it's done, and I think it's in a timely order or fashion, and again, like I say, for the most part, it's great. So I had a couple of questions. I know a certain amount of the city is done by the city and some of it's done privately. So I'm wondering if someone could tell me if there's a certain number of routes and how many would be city and how many would be private.
Yep, I can give a little bit of that information. There are well, two things. I can give some high-level information if we want, depending on how the committee, how far or deep the committee wants to get into it. We may want to invite Director Goody in to give more detailed information. But there are four main, three main routes. Is this right? Yep, based on the map that Greg sent me today. Basically, the old town is done by city staff, and it seems silly to call them the amalgamated areas, but the areas that were amalgamated in 1995 are done by contractors.
Okay, so basically, to simplify it, and I'm not trying to leave anybody out, but so the old city of Summerside is done by city employees, and the communities of St. Elders and Wilmot would be done by a private contractor.
Correct. A few years ago, we increased the area that was done by city staff slightly to try. Historically, there's always been discussions about each area is getting the same level of service. We made some changes to the routes a few years ago to theoretically make the service level more equal, where we increase the area that was being done by city staff, basically leaving less for the contractor to do. So currently the times, if we're just doing assaulting, it's supposed to be done within 4 to 5 hours. If we're doing a full plow run, it's going to take 8 to 12 hours, and the timing is the same in all the routes.
Yeah. Yeah, so in theory, the idea is you try to get everybody done within a certain time frame. Yeah. And you know what, for the most part, like, and again, personally, I have very little issue with it. I happen to do a little bit of snow removal privately on the side, so I'm out, you know, usually an hour after the plows start. I usually go out and start. And so I end up doing a lot of where the private contractor is on the east side of Summerside. And again, like, to me, they do a good job for the most part. But I have noticed there's one or two streets, for whatever reason, always seem to be laid on or last, or I don't know if last is the right word, but they just seem to be they don't get done as quick as the other ones. And I understand the theory behind it too, because when I leave home to do something, I pretty well have a route in my mind. And anytime I get called because someone needs to be out or and I leave my route, whether it's an age thing or whatever, you'd be almost guaranteed I'm going to skip somebody. So I can see why someone would have a plan when they leave, and whether it is if you're going out of town, you do everything on your right and you go as far as you have to be, and then you come in and you constantly, so you're working on your right hand all the time. And that way everybody gets done, because, and if I follow my plan, everybody gets done. But like I say, if I start jumping from spot to spot, I forget people. So I'm assuming that the contractors, both the city and the private ones, pretty much do some of that. And that's probably the reason things are done, like this street's done before that one, and what, because they do it the same way all the time, which is, and I understand why. The only thing I'm wondering, is there any possibility, because some people feel, yeah, we're always last, or they feel like they're always last, or they're late, if every now and then we couldn't, or whoever does that area couldn't, do a few that usually gets done last, if they couldn't be first. So every third time out, or whatever it is, just change it a little bit, and then it might seem fair to everybody. So I'm not saying they have to do that. I'm not, but I can understand, because I'm around and I see it. I know some places are done, if they go out at 1:30 or 2, there's certain places you can guarantee by 4 there's a huge section that's done, and there's another part it might be 6 or 6:30 before they get there. And I sometimes wonder if you couldn't just reverse it. That's all. So it's just some thoughts, because the good people in Ward 7 and Green Shore, 3 Oaks, there's a couple of people that have called and inquired, and it was only this year, but it's certainly been the last 2 or 3 years that I've been moving snow, and it's consistently the same areas. So anyway, just a thought, and I'm sure it would make them happier if they had a turn being first or early on in the route. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just going to kind of comment on that, since I am the chair of Municipal Works. What I have learned over the last year and a half on that, it kind of goes in stages. It depends on when the storm starts, when the storm finishes, what the storm actually is, if it's just snow, or if it's snow and freezing rain together. If it finishes at 6:30 in the morning, the priority places are the hospital, the malls, places that businesses are working on. Those are the priorities right at the beginning. If there's no school, obviously they're going to leave that for the time being and go and get all the other streets opened up. And as long as they have no breakdowns, we're good to go. But if they have a breakdown, everything is going to get pushed back. So we're trying.
And I fully agree and understand with everything that you're saying, and like I say, I know breakdowns aren't good, and it depends too. That's another issue and I didn't mention it, but yeah, most times it snows and they go out at 2 o'clock in the morning, but the problem is sometimes it doesn't start snowing until 7 in the morning, and it storms till 8 o'clock that night. So then it constantly changes that way. And most times, and for instance, this winter, there's been, the snowfalls that we had, there was only one where even a normal everyday car couldn't go out. Every other one you could have went out anyway. So it's not like people can't get somewhere, even though it's better if they stay home for a couple hours and give everybody with equipment a chance to clean up, and it makes it a lot easier when the cars aren't out there and but absolutely, all those factors make a difference, and I understand that. But it's just nice if every now and then, and I have no issues, because it always seems like I'm one of the first ones done. Like I'm just amazed that anyway, the little area that I live in gets plowed so quick, and I'm very fortunate that way. But I know for a fact there's other people, I can be out for 3 or 4 hours and their street still hasn't been done or hasn't been touched. And I understand why. But all I'm suggesting is that, that maybe every now and then it can be switched up. And I understand why the order is too, and why we have a plan, and you kind of stick to it. You can say, no one knows better than me, because I'm very forgetful. And people aren't happy when They don't get done at all, but anyway, most people, you know, like I say, we're extremely lucky. I've been in Halifax, and I've been in Moncton, and I've been in Ottawa, and places that, well, they don't even do the streets. So in Summerside, I mean, you can go 45 minutes east of here, and it's not good. But they have different issues than we do. We have a little bit of room to put the snow. They don't have it sometimes, but there's no question we're far ahead of most communities that I've ever been in, and we're very lucky. But still, that doesn't mean that, the odd time, instead of waiting 4 or 5 hours, this time you'll be, you know, an hour or two in. And most people aren't going anywhere. They just look out the window and like to see that it's done. They probably, I have nothing to say, but it's nice. And again, like I said, there hasn't been enough snow to stop anybody really from going anywhere this winter. You know, I just heard the forecast for Thursday, Friday. That might be enough to stop people, but anyway, hopefully it won't be. But, and again, like, I appreciate the work that's done. I think they do a great job. They've done it for years, and they do, and, you know, and it's always been good in my mind. But just, maybe just a switch once in a while where you know, reverse it, where people are getting done last are gonna get done first the next time, or try to keep everybody happy. Thank you.
Councillor Adams?
So I guess I'll just sort of piggyback on that, and I agree that, you know, we're above and beyond in some areas, but it doesn't mean you can't continue to improve on what you're doing. As Councillor Rick mentioned, the outskirts of the city are contracted out, and we just don't receive the same level of service that we do from the city staff. We kept track of it last time that the plows were called out. In the St. Elners area, we seen a plow at 10. In Wilmot area, we didn't see a plow till 3 p.m. And plows were out in city center all day. And then the city comes out and does a sidewalk and so on. And it's hard when you have an area like mine where part of it till just past Starlight is the province is plowing the roads and they're down to the pavement. But once you hit Ross Avenue, you're like in slush, like halfway up your tires. So it just goes to prove that there is a discrepancy between what we see between the contractor and what our city staff do. The level of service is not nearly the same, but we all pay the same tax dollars for the same level of service. The contract obligations, I guess, are something I'd be curious about. We expect a certain level of service from our city staff. What is the level of service that we are expecting from the contractor, and who's checking on those obligations to see if they're met? And another thing would be that the contractor really needs to review routes prior to snowfall, because you'll see in the areas that where the contractors are, there's times where they aren't even on the road plowing snow. They're off into somebody's yard because they aren't aware of the layout of the road. So then that comes back on, they have to do more spring work and come back and clean it up. And it's not a necessity that it has to happen if the work was done beforehand. So I don't know if that's something that Director Greg can bring back, what the contract obligations are, but the same as what Councillor Rick said, if you're flip-flopping where you're gonna start and stop, maybe you should be flip-flopping on who's serving what areas of the city. Maybe we should flip and let the contractor do city center and let city staff do the outskirts for a winter and see how we get along.
To Councillor Adams' point, can you give a brief description, and maybe we do have to wait for Director Greg to come back with some information, but currently, I mean, there's no sense having, I understand what's going on. You need to open the city center before you there's no sense not having the city center open, otherwise you're not going anywhere. But the timing, to their point, it'd be frustrating to see everything else open. How do the plows end up getting called out? So when the city plows get called out, are they in turn calling out the contractors at the same time?
Yeah,
Or
they're all going out at the same time. Service level standards are supposed to be the same. The requirements are all the same. City management staff are following up on the service level provided by city staff and the contractor. And there are also some differences in terms of some areas of town, St. Albans and Wilmot had different road standards. So there are many more streets in those areas that don't have curbs. That can lead to certainly more roadside damage. But yes, just to be clear, like the city, the plows all go out at the same time. And there's the standard for how long they have to get things done is the same in all areas of the town or the city. And basically the plowing routes are divided up into the east ward, or the west ward, the center ward, and the east ward. And they all have the same service level standards.
if I recall correctly, I think Greg, a couple of years ago, maybe year one or two, I don't know.
Yeah.
But he did a presentation
Yeah.
on that very thing, how it all worked. It might be worthwhile for some sort of update, just how things are working and who does what and so on.
Yeah, I think that would be, and I know Greg's actually working on that, and so when that's finished, we will share that with council for sure.
And what about GPS on the snow removal equipment like other cities have? Is that a possibility? Are they equipped with it, or?
I think that would be a good part of the discussion if Greg comes in, yeah.
Okay, so maybe we can follow up with Greg, and we can do a separate presentation on snow clearing, existing contracts, and options, and explore Rick's option and Councillor Adams' option. Is that okay, councillors? Okay, great. With that, we'll move on to item 14, department names. Councillor Doiron.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. I should be able to get this covered in 7 minutes. So with all of the new housing and new residents that are coming to Summerside, even before this boom started happening, got to thinking every department in our city obviously has a name, and I think there's 12 departments. 3 of them at least kind of stand out as being, you know, what is entailed in that, like technical services, community services, municipal services. Like what, as a new resident, seeing those 3 department names, you got to wonder, you know, what falls under those departments. So I just thought maybe we could have a brief chat about, you know, just the names of all of our departments. I know that, like municipal services, on their building they have a sign that says Municipal Works. On the website it says Public Works Division. Like there's just a lot of inconsistencies sort of within some of those departments. I know like Summerside Electric kind of uses that term, but is that is Summerside Electric actually a thing, or is it just fall under municipal services? And then on the website, like there's headings at the top that don't even have those department names in it. They kind of fall under different things. So it's probably a communications piece, but just thought I'd bring it up and see what people have to say about it. Like community services, I think typically that type of department is referred, in most municipalities, something like, you know, Parks and Recreation, or municipal services, I think is usually like Public Works, technical services, planning department, just like simplified things that I think make a lot more sense to both residents that have always been here and new residents, just when they're trying to navigate City Hall and trying to find the right contacts for what, questions they might have, so. Again, most of them are quite obvious, like police services, fire services, HR, legal, like it's all pretty clear for the most part, but there's those three and then a few of those, sort of divisions that fall within, are they actually names or is it just what we're calling them? So just thought I'd, bring that up, and if it's something that staff would want to review, or if anybody had any specific suggestions on that, or maybe status quo is fine. It's just, I was a bit confused, a few years ago coming onto council what the departments were, so I could only imagine what some residents probably become quite frustrated when they're trying to research who they're supposed to be contacting for things, so, yeah. And Culture Summerside, is that the name, or is it Culture and Heritage, like just, things like that, so.
Gordon, years ago, it would have been Parks and Recreation. I'm trying to think back when I was a kid, there was definitely different names that have changed or been renamed over time, and I'm sure there's a reason for that, just like there's a reason Councillor Doiron's bringing it up now. So it'd be interesting to know why they decided to change the name from whatever, Parks and Recreation, to Community Services, or why it didn't remain, so.
Maybe I'd suggest we put this on the work plan for bylaw governance and communications, and do some work there and bring something back to council.
Even come back and review an Oregon names chart, and can bring it back to council, and can have Councillor Doiron join for that bylaw governance and communications committee meeting to provide feedback if you wish. Council okay with that? Okay, send it to the BGC committee. Your committee, Councillor Adams? Great. With that, we will adjourn our committee of the whole meeting for March 5th, 2024, and then starting in 3 minutes at 6 p.m., we will start our special council meeting of the same date. Thank you, council. We'll be back in a few minutes. Thanks, Brian. All right, we'll get started, folks. I will call to order our special council meeting of March 5th, 2024, here at the City of Summerside. Welcome to all members of the public who are joining us for the special council meeting, and those that came in and caught the tail end of our riveting discussion on snowplows and name changes. Rest assured, there were other items before those this evening. Welcome to all of you. I will call for a motion to approve the agenda for the special council meeting as presented. Councillor Gallant, second. Councillor Cameron, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, we will proceed with the special council meeting agenda as presented. At this point, I'll call for a declaration of conflict of interest for any member of council with respect to either of the items on the special council meeting for this evening. Hearing none, we'll move on to item 4. Items 4 and 5 fall under the purview of our planning board chair, the reliable Councillor Doiron. Councillor, over to you.
Great. Gotta live up to that now. Okay, thank you, Your Worship. Item 1, zoning amendment application for 109 Small Avenue. An application was received from JMK Fish Mart Inc. for PID number 497735. The purpose of the zoning amendment is to allow an apartment building, not a fish mart, in the proposed R4 zone. The application was advertised in the February 17th edition of The Guardian, and letters were mailed to property owners within 60 meters or 200 feet of the subject properties. We'll begin with an explanation of the process. So in order to process a zoning bylaw amendment, the following steps are required. Step 1, the zoning bylaw amendment is read a first time and declared as read at a first council meeting. Step 2, the zoning bylaw amendment is referred to planning board for review and recommendation. And those 2 steps are taking place this evening. Step 3, planning board reviews the application and prepares a recommendation to council. And it looks like that will likely take place on March 13th, the same night as a special council meeting. So that meeting starts at 6, so it'll likely be March 13th at 5:30. Usually we take these, so. Step 4, the zoning bylaw amendment is read a second time and declared as read at a second council meeting. And step 5, the zoning bylaw amendment is read to be adopted by council. The resolution will be either carried or defeated by vote of council. If the zoning bylaw amendment is adopted by council, it is sent to the Minister of Communities, Land and Environment for signature, and the amendment becomes official. Steps 4 and 5 take place at council's second meeting, and I believe that'll be at our monthly council meeting on March 18th. Please note that in accordance with section 5.20 of the city zoning bylaw, any person who is dissatisfied by a decision of council in respect of the administration of this bylaw may appeal council's decision within 21 days to the Island Regulatory and Appeals Commission. So regardless, there's always 3 meetings every time we go through a rezoning application, and the decision is made by all of council at the last meeting. So the current zone, medium-density residential R3, the purpose of this zone is to provide for medium-density housing in the form of single-family, semi-detached, duplex dwellings, townhouses, row houses, and other compatible uses. So permitted uses in the current R3 zone include single-family dwelling, semi-detached dwelling, duplex dwelling, accessory buildings, assisted living facilities, mobile homes lawfully existing prior to 1999. Discretionary uses in the current R3 zone, subject to council approval, include medium childcare facilities, group homes, boarding house, community care nursing home, social services agency, or tourist home and inn. And also 8 units per building maximum townhouses, rooming houses, 8 units per building maximum row houses, and 4 unit maximum apartments. Conditional uses subject to a development officer approval, permitted in the current R3 zone, home-based business, secondary suites, and B&B and vacation rental property. So all of those items described above are, as of right, can go into that current zone today. The proposed zone, high-density residential R4, the purpose of this zone is to provide for high-density housing in the form of apartments, as well as housing in the form of single-family, semi-detached, duplex dwellings, row house, townhouse, and other compatible uses. Permitted uses subject to bylaw requirements in the R4 zone, single-family dwelling, semi-detached dwelling, apartment building, boarding house, accessory building, assisted living, duplex dwelling, group home, medium childcare facility, rooming house, row house, townhouse, community care and nursing home, or social services agency. Discretionary uses subject to council approval in the R4 zone, tourist home and inn. And conditional uses subject to a development officer approval in the R4 zone, home-based business, B&B and vacation rental property, or secondary suites. We will now invite, if the applicant is here, to make any comments. Crystal McLeod, if there's anything, if Crystal's here, or if there's somebody representing the applicant that's here that would like to say anything, by now would be the time to do so. If not, we'll move on to council and public comments or questions. I will first just read a letter. There is one letter that came in that I'd like to read into the minutes, and then we'll open the floor if anybody here has any questions or comments. This is from Charles Brown, 737 Flamingo Drive. It was addressed to his councillor, Councillor Adams. I, Charles Brown, residing at 737 Flamingo Drive, am writing to express my concerns regarding the proposed bylaw zoning amendment at 109 Small Avenue. I'm opposed to the proposed change from R3 medium density to R4 high density zoning for the property on Small Avenue. As a resident of Small Avenue and Flamingo Drive, my neighbors and I believe it is important for the property to maintain its current R3 zoning to preserve the character of our neighborhood. If JMK Fish Mart intends to construct an apartment complex, they should have sought out property in an R4 zone, of which there are plenty available in the newly planned subdivision. The issue at hand is not a lack of available apartments in Summerside, but rather the shortage of laborers to complete construction projects. Even with the city's growing population, there is a significant deficiency in the number of skilled laborers needed to keep up with the demand for new housing. At the current pace, it is more feasible to expect the completion of projects such as the Dynasty Spa before the majority of these apartments are finished. I urge the council to consider alternative plans for the lot on Small Avenue, all of which exclude converting it to an R4 zone. Option 1, maintain the property's R3 zoning to allow for potential placement of a mobile home, enabling immediate occupancy. Option 2, convert the property into a green space, particularly as it is situated north of the Confederation Trail. Previous promises made by developers of the Starlight Drive subdivision to include green spaces have been undermined by private dealings between developers and the planning board that resulted in the conversion of these spaces into building lots. Option 3, the property could serve as an access road to the 2 planned subdivisions, preventing roads from crossing the trail. In summary, residents of our subdivision advocate for maintaining the lot's R3 zoning to prevent the neighborhood from becoming a mixture of R3 and R4 properties. Doing so will avert the need for future council meetings to renegotiate zoning issues, potentially leading to further conversions from R3 to R4. Moreover, the current shortage of laborers poses a significant obstacle to completing ongoing projects, let alone embarking on new ones. Additionally, due to its location, the lot holds potential for conversion into either a green space or an access road to future subdivisions. Thank you for considering my concerns. Sincerely, Charles Brown. So with that being said, if anyone here has any questions or comments, just please free to step up to the podium and state your name and address for the record. And if you do have any questions that can't necessarily be answered today, just due to, the nature of the question, it might need further details. We will address those questions in our planning board meeting on whatever that date was, March 13th. And maybe nobody wants to say anything. That's fine too. So please just state your name and address, and we'll. No, just up to the microphone. Sorry, at the podium.
Okay, I'm at 111 Small Avenue, right beside the property you own. Anyway, I don't want it zoned for that. I just find it's quiet and peaceful there now, but with an apartment building or something going up, I find it's going to be a big change. What else do you want to say?
Chris Carey, 113 Small. Been living there since '01. In '08, I acquired the property off Russell Rogers. And at that time, I went to come down to talk about building a little bungalow there. And they told me that it was zoned for mobile homes right from the trail, right up to Woodridge to the very back. So I'm just kind of inquiring why at that time I wasn't able to apply to build a little bungalow, and now it's considering an apartment building, I guess. Because if it starts there, does that mean that any property up in Woodridge, any mobile home can be bought and then transferred over to an R4 or Zone 4? And then apartment buildings are going to be going up everywhere in that area where I've been there for over 20-some years. Thank you.
Chris, do you know that lot that's in question, is that the lot that's before us tonight, or is that another lot? The one that you applied to have a...
Where I live right now,
He lives there
113.
Okay, so
Yeah,
that
I've been
may
there
have
since
been...
01. I bought the mobile home, and then in 08, Russell Rogers was selling off a bunch of properties. And I was looking at building a small little bungalow, and they said, no, it was reserved for trailer or mobile homes right from the trail all the way back. So
So do you know what that lot was zoned at the time?
It was,
Like it wasn't
what it is
R3?
now, like R3 or what, I'm not too familiar.
Which is just 2 up from.
Yeah, I'm just 2 doors down.
Okay.
'Cause
So,
Ken-
Linda, would there be a reason why a bungalow couldn't go in an R3?
No, it's a permitted use in the R3 zone there. You had read it earlier.
Okay, because they told me that I can purchase a new mobile home and put it there, but as far as building anything, they told me back in 08 that I wasn't allowed.
Okay. Who's they? Like,
There was somebody in here, this was a while ago, I don't remember, I just remember talking to someone, and they
Yeah.
said, no, that basically from the trail up was just strictly for mobile homes or module homes, or,
yeah, I don't know, maybe we could get, I don't know if that's an answer we can get, since whoever was here may not be here now, but.
no, yeah, like
An
I said.
R3 zone permits anything other than just a
Okay,
mobile home.
they just told me it was a trailer park, considered a trailer park, it was grandfathered as a trailer park.
Unless the size of the lots prevented a bungalow.
I
Like
got
it's
the second
R3
biggest.
has its own standards.
Yeah, no,
like
I
it
got
should
the
be.
second biggest one,
Yeah.
next to 109, then 11, then mine's the third biggest.
Okay, that might be an answer we can try to get, but again,
It's
if
not that much, I
there's
got,
nobody we can ask, then
yeah,
it's weird that,
just, I was curious about it,
Yeah.
that's, thank you.
Okay, I'm not kidding.
She makes good cookies.
My next question is, when are we gonna know whether it's gonna be sound or not? That's my next question.
so tonight, we kind of compile these questions and compile information. The planning board meeting, and the planning board is myself and Deputy Mayor Snow, Councillor Morrison, and Mayor. We will present that report on March 13th. And planning board will vote to recommend the application to council, or may vote not to it. Either way, it goes to council to make a decision, whether the planning board recommends it or not. And that final decision is March 18th, which all of council will be making. Council sort of just relies on the planning board to make recommendations or not.
Perfect, thank you.
So, yeah, March 18th, 6:30 PM is when the monthly council meeting starts. It'll be posted, I mean, usually, letters don't go out, because it's a regularly scheduled public meeting, like it's the monthly meeting that happens every month. So this will just be an item on the agenda for that night. Yeah, March 18th. Is it usually part of the meeting?
The March 13th one.
Oh, the 13th one? So the planning board meeting, usually there's a special council meeting scheduled that night at 6. So usually we'll hold a planning board meeting just before that at 5:30. That way people aren't waiting through the whole special council meeting just to get to that. Unless anybody can't, on the planning board, can't make 5:30 on the 13th. So we'll say meeting 2 of 3 is going to be March 13th at 5:30. So that's when we'll address the report for the application. And in the report, usually it'll be vehicle capacity and sewer capacity, like the capacity that the lot has for all the new zoning requirements, and staff will recommend it to be approved or not to the planning board. It can be a confusing process, but we try to lay it out as clearly as we can. Deputy Mayor Snow, you had your...
Just to add on to what you're saying, and as you're asking questions here tonight, and we're looking at you like we don't know what we're talking about, that's just part of the process. We take the questions in, we don't necessarily answer them, it's not for us to necessarily answer, so that's, our department will go back and take your questions and get the answers to them to present to council. So your questions to us are just that, they're questions coming to the city to be answered by our department. I am curious though, in that area, certain pieces of land are privately owned, but then goes into what would be known as a trailer park owned by one developer, correct? So how far in there, how many lots are we talking? So there's 109, sounds like there's 111, 113. Is there a significant number of privately owned R3 lots in that area, or what makes up that area?
I can try to get that information for you. Should be, I'm guessing there's 20 to 30 lots that are privately owned.
Perfect, thank you.
And just, I know Councillor Adams has her light on. Typically, this is the first time that we're seeing this information as well. I mean, we get the package a couple of days in advance of what's going to be on the meeting tonight, but hearing from you folks and occasionally like the applicant, like this is the first time that we're getting the information as well. So just wanted to let everyone know that as well, that we haven't been, you know, sitting on this for a month or anything. So, Councillor Adams.
This gentleman can go first.
Sure.
That's
Just-
all right.
yeah.
You're good.
Hi, I'm Kurt Howard. I live at 735 Flamingo Drive. And I was wondering if the safety concerns have been taken into consideration for where this construction is taking place. There's over 200 homes beyond that point right there where they're considering building. And, you know, over 500 people. There is one road in, and it's right there where it starts. I understand the east-west housing corridor is being built, and eventually the plan is to have a separate entrance on the park. But right now, we've got 500 residents there on a very narrow residential road. If even one car parks on the side of that road, you have a one-lane road and 500 people trying to get in and out of there. And I would think in an emergency scenario, that could be very bad, especially if it was around 5 o'clock when there's hundreds of cars going through there. And the other concern is if adequate parking has been taken into consideration for the construction, where the excavator is going to park while they're building this thing. That lot is a lot for a trailer. It's not enormous. By the time they start building the foundation and possibly any parking they plan to have for the actual units, I don't see where all those construction workers and vehicles are going to park that isn't going to cause a safety concern for everyone that lives there. Even after the east-west housing corridor is finished, we have one more entrance, but we have half the majority of people there that are still going to be blocked off. And also, I have concerns about the parking for whatever units are going in there. I mean, it hasn't been discussed how many bedrooms are going to be in each one of those units or how much parking there is going to be for them. But if, you know, if everyone has 2 cars that's living there, or someone comes and visits any one of those people, they're going to be parking on the road. And again, blocking off that major roadway where the majority of people that live are coming through. Right now, the only roadway for all of those people is right there. And it's one thing to look at it on a map, but if you actually go out there, that road is very narrow all the way down. It's narrow for even 2 cars. But to have a car parked there completely blocks off an entire lane of traffic. And I think that's just very concerning going forward in general. And again, it's already been brought up by the letter that was read, but I'm confused as to why housing is being rezoned in residential neighborhoods like this when there are plenty of places to build an apartment complex. But the whole point of the east-west housing corridor was to bring the infrastructure needed in order to build high-density housing, rather than shoehorning high-density housing into a medium-density housing area. It's just, I find it concerning, and I was just hoping that those kinds of questions could be asked to the developer.
Okay. And there is, the next couple pages, like it does show, I think, the proposed sort of type of structure that's gonna, that they want to put there. It does show a parking lot. Of course, these are concepts, but
What's the parking requirements on this build, Linda?
I don't understand how a major structure like this with parking for all those people is going to fit on a trailer lot. I mean, this is not an enormous lot, and they're only going 2 stories. I don't understand the logistics of how such a thing is possible.
And
They've already clear-cut a bunch of trees along the Confederation Trail that were there.
So the parking requirements and the capacity for vehicles that are, you know, the standard for an R3 lot will be addressed in the report. Linda, is parking requirements based on a certain amount of space, I think, per unit? So if it's an 8-unit building, it's like 1.5 spaces per unit? Or is it a area based?
So the parking requirements are 1 parking space per unit. The developer could put more than that on the site. The other thing that will be looked at the time of review for the site plan would be the building floor area ratio. So we have to make sure that this building will fit on the lot with the appropriate parking. So if it's deemed to be too large for that lot, then they would have to downsize the building.
Okay, so those stats, those will be presented at that meeting on March 13th.
Okay.
13th?
But in theory, if they build 8 2-bedroom units, they are only required to have 8 parking spaces.
Parking
Is that
space
my
per
understanding?
unit, yeah. Yeah, unit is considered like a dwelling, not a room.
Okay, so again, any extra cars, say a roommate or someone coming to visit, would just park on the road, thus cutting off traffic.
Park on the road, or if there is more spaces available, then yeah. I mean, this is all
He's only required to do 8.
maybe, could be
Right.
kind of conversations that we're having right now, but
Yeah, that seems very concerning to me, that they're only gonna have 8 spaces, or in theory, 8 spaces. Again, I'm not sure how they're gonna fit a whole lot more than 8, but
and just to,
does it say how many bedrooms in this plan that we did not get, that they plan to build in the units?
I mean, we could count by looking at the plan.
2 bedrooms.
Looks like 2 per unit.
Right.
2 bedroom, one bathroom per unit.
So they're not required to have 16 spaces then, even though they're gonna have 2 people living there in each unit.
That's right, space per unit.
So we could potentially
But-
have
But, and I don't
8
like
units
to,
parked on the road
yeah.
over
Sure.
a long distance there, blocking off a
Yep.
major.
And I don't like to, I just try to bring up points, whether it's for or against, but the R3 zone, which is just zone 4 now, as of right tomorrow, you could build an 8-unit row house.
It's zoned for,
It's zoned R3, and something that's allowed in an R3 is an 8-unit row house.
With council approval.
With council approval, yeah, but
okay,
it's
yeah, because I'm
it's
confused,
discretionary
because the
use.
sheet we got said that a duplex was the
But it's
largest
not a
they could
full
build.
zoning, yeah.
Yeah, everything else needs council approval.
Yeah.
Right.
It would have to come
But still,
forward just like
still the
this.
right zoning.
So it could still just be approved even without rezoning it? They could build an 8-plex unit?
Well, the difference between row house and apartment, I guess, would be you can put more units in an apartment.
But it says it still also requires conditional use approval, which
Yeah.
would be council approval.
Yeah,
Anything above a duplex.
yeah.
Yes, but again, the requirement the planning board and then council would ultimately have to review may be different for a rezoning as opposed to a conditional use approval compared to a restricted use approval, whatever those are. Certainly highlights the, again, the jump from our R3 to R4, and it is something that we have identified as a council that we're working on, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all.
Thank you. Did you want me to, is there anybody else wants to?
Okay, anyone else, or Councillor Adams?
Okay, thank you. I'm just wondering, how many letters went out? Do we know, Linda?
We'll provide all that information in the planning board
Okay.
report.
Okay, so if we can find out how many letters went out. If we can have an overview of the current R4, where its locations are in the city in the report, that would be good. I came across sort of an interesting quote when it was being talked about housing. You can build all the houses that you want, but if you can't connect them to your water and sewer, to your electrical, if there aren't playgrounds for the kids to play in, roads and sidewalks for people to get to and from those houses, there really is no use. So when I read that, I thought about this particular lot. There are no sidewalks. When you're driving by on Water Street East, you might look up small and you might think that this is curbed and sidewalked. It only goes to the Water Street East side of Flamingo, and then it stops. From then on, it is an extremely high traffic area, like the Howards mentioned. There is no sidewalk, there is no curbing, there is no road markings. The shoulder of the road is not a built-up, sturdy side of the road. It's just grassy, muddy side of the road. So I guess, and the playground that these people would access, there is a small playground further up that's run by and owned by Woodridge. Other than that, these people would have to walk down the road where there's no sidewalks to get to a sidewalk, to cross Water Street East, to walk down the road, to get into Lafergie subdivision, to get to any kind of playground for families, or green space for that matter. It is very busy there with the trail going through. I can say, and I don't know if it's proper to request a police report, but Small Avenue is without a doubt the road that I get the most calls and concerns about when it comes to pedestrian safety, when it comes to speeding, when it comes to vehicles running stop signs at Flamingo and Small. And then there's also the emergency services vehicles and Waste Watch that would have to get into this area if there ever was an emergency. That would also be a concern. I would imagine that maybe can this be run by fire services to see what they can actually get in there once all this is done, because I know we've had other streets where we've had to put cul-de-sacs because there's been concerns from emergency services about accessing apartment buildings. So I guess those are just a few of my off the top of my head things that I know are very concerning and are everyday concerns to the people that live there. And I think until, like I said, driving by, you look up Small, it looks all great, but once you get past Flamingo, it is another story, and that's where you have hundreds and hundreds of people that just use that one way out, so.
I just have a question in advance for Linda that maybe you can bring as well. With respect to what are the on-street parking restrictions, if there are any in the area, Small, Flamingo? I know, again, echo Councillor Adams' comments with respect to the narrowness of the road and the pinch point that we're trying to address with the east-west corridor for emergency safety and access. But I'd be curious about on-street parking. Whenever I've been up there, I don't think there are any restrictions, but if you can confirm that, that would be great for the next meeting.
Councillor Cameron?
Sorry, I meant to shut that off. My question had been kind of previously addressed when it came to the proposed plans that are here. I guess, Linda, what is being proposed, does that not fit into what's already, like if it was to go to discretionary use under R3, does that kind of not fit into that already? It just seems a little confusing that if it would fit into that, why would we even consider rezoning to R4 if that's what's being presented?
What was being presented is a apartment building, and in the discretionary use in the R3 zone minimizes or
So that does
or
fit,
limits,
that fits under an apartment building?
it limits it to 4 units though only, and they're proposing 8.
Okay, so this wouldn't classify as a row house or a townhouse?
No.
Okay, perfect.
What's the difference between a townhouse 8-unit and apartment 8-unit?
Yeah, that would be great to know, because I thought that fell under a townhouse or a row house.
I'll have to go through that stuff and bring it back in the report, but.
Okay. Anyone else? Councillor McCollum?
I'm just wondering, the letter that you read, I believe, from Mr. Brown, is there a copy of that in our package, or can we receive that?
Brian
Before
had
the-
just emailed it to me before the meeting, but I
Okay.
can forward it to everyone, or Brian can forward it to
So
everyone.
if there are any emails or letters that have come that we don't have, could we get that?
Yeah, it was just the one that came in. It was late this afternoon.
That came in a couple days ago.
Oh, okay. It was sent out to me, yeah, today. Okay. Yeah, it was dated March 4th, so yesterday. So I guess if there's no one else, we'll carry on with the resolutions. Now, these resolutions are simply to get it to the next stage in the process. It doesn't indicate support or for or against. Resolution COS 24-016, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Gallant. Whereas an application was received from JMK Fish Mart Inc. for a zoning amendment for PID number 497735 from medium-density residential R3 zone to high-density residential R4 zone under the City of Summerside zoning bylaw. Be it resolved that zoning amendment 0028 be hereby declared as read a first time. Zoning amendment 0028, a bylaw to amend the City of Summerside zoning bylaw. The Council of the City of Summerside, under authority vested in it by Section 18 and Section 19 of the Planning Act, hereby enacts as follows. The zoning for PID number 497735, shown on Schedule B of the City of Summerside zoning bylaw, is designated as high-density residential R4 zone, hereby excluding it from its former designation of medium-density residential R3 zone.
Thank you, Councillor. Resolution COS 24-016, moved by Councillor Doiron, seconded by Councillor Gallant, is on the floor. Is there any further discussion or comments from council? Yeah, hearing none, I will call for a vote. All in favor of the resolution, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the resolution is carried.
Resolution COS 24-017, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Cameron. Whereas an application was received from JMK Fish Mart Inc. for a zoning amendment for PID number 497735 from medium-density residential R3 zone to high-density residential R4 zone under the City of Summerside zoning bylaw. And whereas zoning bylaw amendment 0028, a bylaw to amend the City of Summerside zoning bylaw, was read and declared as read a first time at this council meeting, be it resolved that zoning bylaw amendment 0028, a bylaw to amend the City of Summerside zoning bylaw, be hereby referred back to the Planning Board for review and recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor. Resolution COS 24-017, moved by Councillor Doiron, seconded by Councillor Cameron, is on the floor. Are there any further comments or questions by council at this time? Hearing none, I will call for a vote. All in favor of said resolution, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the resolution is carried.
So that is that one. Again, March 13th is the planning board meeting where we will present the report. 5:30, March 13th.
Thank you, Councillor. And then just to reiterate again, those resolutions are to simply move the item to the next step in the process and are a standard procedure in all circumstances. And so we will reconvene on the 13th at 5:30. Next item is back to you, Councillor Doiron.
Back to me. Zoning amendment application for 90 McDonald Crescent. An application was received from Kenneth and Sheila Kenny for PID number 99994. The purpose of the zoning amendment is to allow a semi-detached dwelling in the proposed R2 zone. Explanation of the process. In order to process a zoning bylaw amendment, the following steps are required. Step 1, the zoning bylaw amendment is read a first time and declared as read at a first council meeting. Step 2, the zoning bylaw amendment is referred to Planning Board for review and recommendation. Those two steps take place at the same meeting of council and will take place this evening. Step 3, Planning Board reviews the applications and prepares a recommendation to council. This will as well be March 13th at 5:30 p.m. Step 4, the zoning bylaw amendment is read a second time and declared as read at a second council meeting. Step 5, the zoning bylaw amendment is read to be adopted by council. The resolution will be either carried or defeated by vote of council. If the zoning bylaw amendment is adopted by council, it is sent to the Minister of Communities, Land and Environment for signature, and the amendment becomes official. Steps 4 and 5 take place at council's second meeting, March 18th, 6:30 p.m. Please note that in accordance with section 5.20 of the city zoning bylaw, any person who is dissatisfied by a decision of council in respect of the administration of this bylaw may appeal council's decision within 21 days to the Island Regulatory and Appeals Commission. So the current zone, single-family residential, R1, the purpose of this zone is to provide for low-density, single-family housing and other compatible uses. Permitted uses, subject to bylaw requirements in the current R1, single-family dwelling, accessory building, or assisted living. Discretionary uses, subject to council approval, medium childcare facility. Conditional uses, subject to a development officer approval, home-based business, secondary suite, or vacation rental property. The proposed zone, low-density mixed residential, R2. The purpose of this zone is to provide for low-density housing in the form of single-family, semi-detached, and duplex dwellings and other compatible uses. Permitted uses, subject to bylaw requirements in the R2 permitted zone, single-family dwelling, duplex dwelling, assisted living, semi-detached dwelling, and accessory building. Discretionary uses, subject to council approval, medium child care facility, social services agency, boarding house, or B&B. Subject to development officer approval, conditional uses include home-based business, secondary suites, or vacation rental properties. I will invite, if desired, the applicant to make any comments. Kenny? If not mandatory at all. Just if you had anything you wanted to say, by all means, now's the time. Or if anyone in the public has any questions, now's the time for that as well, similar to the previous item. And if you would not mind by just stating your name and address.
I'm Dean Sharkey. I live at 80 McDonald Crescent. I've been there for 12 years, and as long as I've been there, that's always been, you know, an empty lot. But he came in and he wanted to put a house there, and the town said no, because the lot was not big enough. And now I get the letter in the mail saying now he's putting a duplex there, and I'm still thinking that why is he putting a duplex if he can't put a house there? You know, the lot's not big enough for one, and depending on the size of the duplex, if it is going to be, how close it is going to be to our property and everything and all that stuff, and how far it's got to be away from the property line for this all. So I just want to know all the details about it, so then I can rest my mind about it.
Yep. Okay, so those specific details as to what is allowed in the R2 will be addressed in the report on March 13th. As far as the closeness to property lines and that sort of thing, if that is the case, then I think, Linda, you can correct me if I'm wrong, appropriate variances would also have to be applied for. That'd be a separate.
Because I got told the property line, you got to be 10 feet away from your property line for any building or anything like that. But a fence can be right on your property line. So I just want to know.
And I think different zonings have different allotments for that sort of thing. And
We will provide the R2 standards in the report, the requirements of how close it would be to property lines.
Okay.
And we'll also should be able to find the size of the lot. I believe that we have that on a survey plan.
Okay.
So if the intended use doesn't meet all of those criteria, once it gets to a certain point, staff would not recommend it to be approved. At the end of the day, it's still up to council whether it's approved. So in the past, when you say somebody wasn't allowed to put something here or there, it may have been because staff didn't recommend it and council went alongside with staff. So
that's all I need to know. I just want to know if the lot would be big enough for it.
So that'll be presented in detail March 13th.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anyone else?
name is Ken, is this on? My name is Ken Kenny, and the property next to Mr. Sharkey's, I always thought it was big enough to build a house on, because that's always been when we had it. The property is 85 feet wide, and it's 120, I think, deep. I'm not too quite sure what that is. But right now, we were just thinking that we would like to build a duplex on that house, because we have just built a duplex right next to where my property is on Rufus Street. And that's, it's 76 feet wide, and it's, I think, 40 feet deep, but we could go a lot deeper on this property because it's 120 feet. So I never thought that was an issue, but first of all, I'd just like to tell the committee that we're not even too sure that we do want to build a duplex. We're applying for that in case we decide to build a duplex, because we have it next door to us right now. But anyways, I always thought it was big enough to build a house on, which, you know, a normal house would be, I don't know, 40 feet by 40 feet, and it's about 1,000 and 2,000 square feet. But anyways, we're not too sure what we want to do, but we thought we would like to get it rezoned for, and we're calling it, I think in the thing it says semi-detached. Is there a difference between semi-detached and duplex?
Yeah, there is.
Is there?
Semi-detached is side by side, duplexes can be side by side, but they can also be over, under. So the dwelling unit you're referring to on Rufus
Yeah,
Street
we have
is
no
a semi-detached,
Ours is semi-detached?
the one that,
Yes,
Yeah.
when I say ours, it's my daughter and my wife built it. Anyways, I don't really have anything else to say. If we can't build it, we just won't build it. I'm getting too old to worry about it. I'm not going into the building thing. I just turned 80 years old, but my son lives next door. And in fact, my father, when I got the property, that's from the old DVA when it was just farmland. So I've always had that little property there, and I've always paid the taxes on it, and it's listed as a service lot. So I always just assumed that I could build a house on it at any time. I've never thought of it being closer to, well, it'd be my son that is close to, and Mr. Sharkey on the other side. But whenever we built the houses on Rufus Street, we had to abide by the distances and whatever, and we made the plans fit that lot. So whenever we talk to our builder, he tells me, well, Ken, he said, yeah, you've got lots of room to build a little duplex or what did you call the other one?
Semi-detached.
Semi-detached. And I didn't notice what the difference was. But anyway, but I see in the letter that we got that it states an awful lot of other things, like nursing homes and, you know, and I don't know, I don't want to open up a can
You
of
didn't
worms.
turn 180, you just turned 80.
What's that?
You just turned 80, not 180. You don't need that yet.
So anyways, whenever we're looking at this place, it was actually for one of my kids that was probably one of the fellas that's the door next door. It's just like a newer building. He may move into there. I don't think Sheila and I are planning on moving out there, but you never know. If it has a garage, we might move out there, because that's what we're lacking right now, but we're very happy with our little bungalow on Rufus Street. So whether we build out there is kind of immaterial, but if we do, it'll be just like what we have next door to us right now. It's just 2 units for senior citizens, so, and that's what's going to be there. So this is what we're looking to have there, and that's only if we have the room and they can make sure that we're 10 feet from, like right now, I think it's, I don't know what it is, but we'll get that from Linda, but from what my builder said, and we do have a builder, we don't have any plans yet, but he said that we have lots of room to build a little duplex there for seniors. It's no basement, be just on a flat slab, and no big high rises. And so that's about all I had to say. If anybody else has any questions, I'm maybe, if I can't answer them, my boss can. Thank you very much.
That's the most wholesome presentation I think I've ever heard. Linda, I think I know the answer to this question, but if someone was to apply for a variance or discretionary use, that expires, right? But if a rezoning occurs, it's for life. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay.
Discretionary uses, restricted uses, variances all have a expiry
Okay.
date.
So if this was to go through, Ken, you wouldn't have to act within 12 months. So, yeah. Okay. Anyone else? If not, I will head into the resolutions. COS 24-018, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McColman. Whereas an application was received from Kenneth and Sheila Kenny for a zoning amendment for PID number 99994 from single-family residential R1 zone to low-density mixed residential R2 zone under the City of Summerside zoning bylaw. Be it resolved that zoning amendment 0043 be hereby declared as read a first time. Zoning amendment 0043, a bylaw to amend the City of Summerside zoning bylaw. The Council of the City of Summerside, under authority vested in it by Section 18 and Section 19 of the Planning Act, hereby enacts as follows. The zoning for PID number 99994, shown on Schedule B of the City of Summerside zoning bylaw, is designated as low-density mixed residential R2 zone, hereby excluding it from its former designation of single-family residential R1 zone.
Thank you, Councillor. Resolution COS 24-018, moved by Councillor Doiron, seconded by Councillor McColman, is on the floor. Any further comments or questions from council? Hearing none, I will call for a vote on said resolution. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the resolution is carried. Councillor?
Resolution COS 24-019, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Adams. Whereas an application was received from Kenneth and Sheila Kenny for a zoning amendment for PID number 99994 from single-family residential R1 zone to low-density mixed residential R2 zone under the City of Summerside zoning bylaw. And whereas zoning bylaw amendment 0043, a bylaw to amend the City of Summerside zoning bylaw, was read and declared as read a first time at this council meeting. Be it resolved that zoning bylaw amendment 0043, a bylaw to amend the City of Summerside zoning bylaw, be hereby referred back to the Planning Board for review and recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Doiron. Resolution COS 24-019, moved by Councillor Doiron, seconded by Councillor Adams, is on the floor. Any further comments or questions from council? Hearing none, I will call for a vote on the resolution. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the resolution is carried. Thank you, Councillor. With that, we are done our public components of our evening. We have one last human resources matter on for this evening, and that is done in camera. So we'll take a 5-minute recess to let people stretch their legs and gather themselves up, and then council will resume with closed door session at 6:55.